Hey guys, it's Bromos and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be going over some more examples on how to analyze stock setups. The format of the video will start with me showing you guys an example setup and asking you guys whether you guys think it's bullish or bearish and why, before I start breaking down the stock setup with technical analysis. But before we start the video, I want to remind you guys to don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you guys see value in the content that I post. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. Here we have a stock that's been moving sideways a bit before making a big move. Now, based on the chart, do you guys think that the setup is bullish just because it made that one big move and it's supposed to keep going higher? Or do you guys think that big move is actually fake and it's just gonna go lower? Pause the video and try to formulate an answer. So the first thing that comes to mind is that we have a bullish engulfing candlestick pattern. For those who aren't familiar with it, bullish engulfing occurs in a downtrend where the current candlestick engulfs the previous candlestick. The more preceding candlesticks that are bearish, the stronger the bullish engulfing is in terms of a possible reversal for the bulls. Textbook definition says that the previous candlestick has to be inside the body of the current candlestick, but I would argue that as long as today's candlestick is way bigger than the previous candlestick, then in my personal opinion, it counts as a bullish engulfing. Next, notice how we have a small downtrend that we break out of. This is another indication that the stock might continue to move higher. But is there anything else that we can say that could possibly make the chart bullish? It's been riding the 50 SMA line very nicely for a while now. Notice how when the stock starts going down, it starts showing signs of rejections at the 50 SMA line before moving up. But what does that exactly mean? It means that buyers recognize this area as a strong area of support and they're starting to step in because they believe that the stock will not go any lower than that. If we look at the bigger picture of the stock, we can see that it keeps making higher lows, signifying that the stock is moving at an upward trend pattern. Some of you guys might be asking, now, is this bounce really that significant? Like, how do you know this could continue to move forward? The answer lies with volume. Volume dictates the overall strength of the stock, and here we can see that there was an abnormal amount of buying volume going on, which indicates that many buyers have their eyes on this. This is why this setup I would personally consider bullish and would take this. Now let's go over how I would take this play. So I would enter anywhere within the blue box of the diagram. My stop loss would be below the 50 SMA line, but for those who want to reduce their risk, they could also have their stop loss at the previous resistance, which is now acting as a level of support here. My price target would just be above the 200 SMA line around this area. Now, let's see what happens if the stock whether it moves higher or lower. So the stock pulls back to the previous resistance before making a nice move towards the 200 SMA and suddenly starts to move even higher. The important thing is that we are out with nice profit. Another thing that I want to point out is that the stock makes another move strong, like a stronger move when the 50 SMA crosses over the 200 SMA. What can we conclude from that? Well, anytime that the 50 SMA line approaches the 200 SMA line, we can predict that a huge move might happen if the technical analysis aligns with what it just did there, because it's consolidating on a level of support. Now, let's take a look at another example. So here we have a stock that's been moving slowly. It's been slowly moving up for around 3 months now, but it seems to be struggling with going over the 200 SMA line. What can we conclude about the overall nature of this stock? Pause the video and think whether the stock will continue to move up or start to go down. Notice how the stock is at a nice upward trend and has made 3 consecutive bounces. If we think in terms of physics, an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. Same concept applies here, meaning that the stock will most likely continue to hold the trend based on previous history. But don't take my word for it, because there could be something that interferes with the trend. So let's see if we can find anything else that validates the upward trend. Notice how as soon as it closed below the, as it closed above the 50 SMA line from a while back, it has never once went back below it. There were a few instances where it pulled back to the 50 SMA line, but ultimately it could not go below and continue to move higher. If we look at the latest candlestick on here, we can see that the stock made a bottoming tail off the 50 SMA line. This tells us that the buyers are still very interested in the stock. Another important thing to note is that the 50 SMA line is getting closer to the 200 SMA line, which is usually a sign of a strong move. Keep in mind that although the 50 SMA line is getting closer to the 200 SMA line, it still needs to actually cross it before the move can actually happen, because you never know what could happen before then. With that in mind, when you have other technical analysis pointing towards bullish, that's something you can make that leap of faith that the 50 SMA will cross over the 200 SMA. Now, is there anything else that we should be concerned about here? Only thing that I would be concerned about is that the fact that the stock has yet to fully stay above the 200 SMA line. The only reason that this doesn't deteriorate my thinking that it's bullish is because that there are more clear signs that this stock is bullish. Fun fact, the RSI is also on support. Now let's see how I would set my trading plan for this. So, I will try to buy within the blue box here and have my stop loss below the 50 SMA line, which is also below the support area of the rising pennant. My price target would be around the top of the rising pennant. Now, let's see what happens. The stock continues to move higher and we are able to sell the stock at the price target that we had originally intended. Notice how the stock sells off once we sold our price target and continues to go lower until the golden cross appears, which results in the stock moving higher. But I mean, we don't really care about that right now because we already made our profit from this. Now, let me show you guys something. Tell me, after seeing this, do you guys think that this is buyable at the time of the video? Leave a comment below in the video on how you guys would break down the setup. But anyways, let's move on to the next example. Here we have a stock that was moving upwards for around 3 months before it starts making a downward type move. What can we conclude about the overall nature of the stock? Pause the video and think whether the stock will move up or down. So on a smaller scale, we can see that the trend is currently downwards. Now the bigger question you need to ask yourself is, do I see any sort of signal that signifies that the stock will go higher? If we look at the big picture, it's true that the stock was at an overall upward trend, but it recently broke below it, thus signifying that the bears are in control of the stock. Remember how I said that the 50 SMA crossing over the 200 SMA was the golden cross, which signifies a big move? If that's the case, then the 200 SMA crossing below the 50 SMA is known as a death cross, which signifies a big move for the bears. Notice after the 200 SMA goes below the 50 SMA, the stock starts to move even more down. It's clear that the 200 SMA area is a major resistance for this stock, and shorts will try to pile around here. Below the purple line is the last level of real support for the bulls, but if the stock goes below that, then the more selling pressure will increase, which is why I consider this setup to be bearish. Now let's see what ends up happening here. As soon as the stock goes below the purple line, shorts start piling like cats and dogs before reaching double support. If you weren't in at the stock and you were waiting for it to hit that double support, then it is possible for you to jump in here for those who love bottom plays. I personally try to avoid playing them just because they don't really fit what I look for in a setup, but that doesn't mean you just can't play them. Anyways, let's wrap things up with the last example. Here we have a stock that's been moving down for quite some time before gapping up. Is there any real purpose to this move that indicates that the stock will reverse, or perhaps it's just a coincidence and that the stock will continue to move lower? Pause the video and take a moment to calculate what you think will happen. So the first thing that comes to mind is that it breaks out of the following pennant chart pattern. In the past, it would usually face this level of resistance and go back down, but for the first time, it actually broke above it. But how do we know that's most likely not going to go back down after this move? Well, take note that the volume was huge when this breakout happened. This tells us that buyers have been watching this level for quite a while, and from the moment that it broke out, buyers understood that this was the time for them to buy in. Not only did it break out, but we can see that it also managed to cross above the 50 and 200 SMA line. However, the fact that the 50 crossed below 200 SMA is not something I want to see, since that's usually an indicator that the stock will move down. However, that is only one indication, and compared to the other things that we just saw, I would think that the stock is more bullish than bearish. Now let's talk about how one could possibly handle this trading setup. The way I would approach this is I would try to buy in when the stock goes closer to the 50 SMA, since I'm someone who likes to buy at pullbacks. However, you could also buy in when it goes higher than the previous close because that would also signify a power for the bulls. My stop loss in this case would be below the 50/200 SMA because it's an area that is hard to break as we have previously seen in the past. My price target would be around where the blue line is because that is an area that has been touched a lot. Now, let's see what happens. And the stock continues to move higher right after it pulled back to the 50 SMA. Note that during the pullback, it closed with a doji at one point, which would have been another signal that the bulls are very interested in the stock. Also, take note of the pullback that it signified a bull flag, meaning you could have also taken advantage of that once it broke out the bull flag. Before I end the video, I want to show you guys that we have a nice 3-bar breakout play here, which is something that most day traders like to use from what I've seen. However, it can also be applied to swing trading as well. Anyways, that's the end of the video. I know I haven't been posting that much in a really long time, and I have been breaking my promises, but I will try to do my best to upload more content. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you guys think we deserve it. If there are any other stock topics you guys would like to see, feel free to let me know in the comment below. Anyways, have a great day.